Now, I would like to have a few words about the life of Robert Frost. Robert Frost enjoyed a great popularity during his lifetime. Not many American poets have had their poetry as well known, widely read, and highly honored as Robert Frost. He transformed the poetic landscape. His life and work are often associated with New England landscapes, but his reputation transcends the regional boundaries. He did not publish his first book of poetry until he was 39 years old, but his poetic career lasted nearly 50 years. On July 4th, 1913, Frost wrote to his friend John Bartlett, describing his strengths as a poet. He says, "To be perfectly frank with you, I'm one of the most notable craftsmen of my time. I alone of English writers have consciously set myself to make music out of what I may call the sound of sense." For about half a century, until his death in 1963, Frost was the unofficial Poet Laureate of America, recipient of more than 40 honorary degrees from colleges and universities, including Oxford and Cambridge, in the same year, 1957. Even at the age of 85, his public reading of his own poetry in a quivering, hardly audible voice still attracted thousands of listeners who were satisfied with just being there with him, enjoying the cadence of verse. Frost was born in San Francisco, California, was educated in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and died in Vermont. But he was pretty much loved as a New Hampshire poet because he lived in New Hampshire from 1895 to 1938. In 1892, Frost graduated from Lawrence High School as a class poet and shared valedictorian honors with Eleanor Marion White, whom he married in 1895. After his graduation from Lawrence High School, Frost attended Dartmouth College briefly, taught at the Salem District School, and also at his mother's school, served in the Lawrence Mill, and worked as a newspaper reporter for Lawrence Daily American and Sentinel. Frost wrote poetry in his spare time and published his first poem, My Butterfly, an Elegy, in Independent, a New York magazine, on November the 8th, 1894. And this is the copy of the magazine which published Frost's My Butterfly, an Elegy. And here there is a note saying, "This was the first magazine of national circulation to accept Mr. Frost's poetry." Frost and Eleanor had 6 children, but of the 6, 2 died in childhood, 1 in childbirth, 1 of suicide, and 1 will end up in mental hospital. However, Frost and Eleanor faced financial difficulty and struggled as a team, homeschooling all their children. Eleanor supported Frost when he tried his hand both as a farmer and a teacher before his literary career took off. Eleanor was instrumental in managing Frost's career. The young couple were challenged in all the ways imaginable, and the inevitable tensions in such a lifelong friendship and partnership are alluded to in Frost's poems, letters, and conversations. In 1897, Frost entered Harvard University, but left before completing degree requirements because of his being affected by tuberculosis and the birth of his second child. And 3 years later, Frost's eldest child died, an event which led to marital disagreement, and which Frost later addressed in his poem, Home Burial. After years of his largely unsuccessful farming in New Hampshire, and his inability to arouse interest of American publishers in his poetry, Frost sold his farm and moved his family in 1912 to England, risking everything to become a poet. From 1912 to 1915, Frost, his wife, and their 4 children lived in England, and during this period, he met such literary figures as Esther Pound and Edward Thomas. Both Pound and Thomas wrote appreciative reviews that helped establish Frost's reputation in England. His first book of poetry, A Boy's Will, was published in England in 1913 and received appreciative reviews. Following the success of the book, Frost published his second book of poetry, North of Boston, in 1914, which also won critical acclaim. And this is the contents of North of Boston. Mending Wall is the first poem. And right after the contents, Frost says, Mending Wall takes up the theme where a tuft of flowers in a boy's will laid it down. And the last 2 lines of A Tuft of Flowers in a Boy's Will are, Men work together. I told him from the heart, whether they work together or apart. Frost has long been considered to be a poet of nature, but the subject of his poems is almost always the humanity. And on the frontispiece of North of Boston was printed his poem, The Pasture. The pasture. I'm going out to clean the pasture spring. I only stop to rake the leaves away and wait to watch the water clear I may. I shan't be gone long. You come too. I'm going out to fetch the little calf that's standing by the mother. It's so young it totters when she licks it with her tongue. I shan't be gone long. You come too. Soon after North of Boston was published, Frost's family returned to the United States in 1915. Upon his return to America, Frost was a successful and celebrated poet. The American editions of his first 2 books of poetry also won critical acclaim upon publication in the United States. In 1917, Frost began his affiliations with several American universities. He was a professor of literature and a poet in residence. A poet of New England soil, Frost spent most of his mature career on farms in New Hampshire and Vermont, while serving intermittently as poet in residence in Amherst, Harvard, Michigan, and Dartmouth. He won 4 Pulitzer Prizes for literature. New Hampshire in 1923, Collected Poems in 1930, A Further Range in 1936, and A Winnie's Tree in 1942. But his most moving appearance was his recitation of his own poem, The Gift of Right, at the presidential inauguration of John Kennedy in 1961 for millions of Americans.